Good morning, everybody. Today we are starting Unit 4. And what we're going to learn about in Unit 4 are what are called fights for equality. And we're going to kind of browse through history and pick out about 3 or 4 times in history where the desire for equality really sort of comes to a head in this country, in the United States. So we're looking at times when there's a group of people, or maybe more than one group of people, who felt like they just don't have the same rights as everybody else. And they want those rights. And so what might start as a conversation between people gets louder and louder and louder until it becomes what's called a protest. A protest can take many, many different forms. If you think about protests, you might think about things you might have seen on television or in the news, like people standing there holding signs that talk about what they disagree with, or perhaps chanting or marching. All of those are forms of protest. Sometimes protests are done very peacefully, and sometimes not. Sometimes they've gotten very, very violent. And that's kind of what we're looking at today is the violence level over time, whether we think it's about the same as it always has been since the beginning of the United States. Has it increased? Has it decreased? I am sure that you are aware of plenty of issues in the current event news, where you're going to see protesting over a variety of things. And the nice thing about living in this country is you do have the ability and the right to protest. You don't have the right to hurt someone else, but you do have the right to protest something that you think is unfair or not right. So, we're going to start today by going way back to colonial times because the American Revolution is sort of the ultimate protest, and really the first serious protest that takes place in this country. The other protests are going to be confined within the country, but this one is not. This one is a group of people who were originally British citizens who are still saying, I don't think we're being treated fairly. Remember that phrase, taxation without representation, because Great Britain was making rules and laws for America without having any American representative on the board to have a say so. Nobody, no American or no U.S., we weren't in the United States at that time, but no American citizen or no colonist at the time had a seat in Parliament where they could speak up for Americans. And that's really what the American Revolution was fought over, this lack of representation, in addition to some other things that are taking place. So, what we're going to look at today, first of all, I've got a question for you. And I want you to think about how far would you go to support something that you believe in? So I want you to try to think of something, a modern issue that you believe strongly in. It could be some of the, like Black Lives Matter, or animal rights, or the rights of children to be protected. It could be anything that's a current issue right now. I want you to think about it, and I want you to think about how far would you go to support this idea that you believe in. And I've given some possibilities here, for you to think about. Some things you could do to protest against something. You could write letters to your congressman. You could use social media or newspapers to put your opinion out there. We know that people do that every day, their opinion about what they think. You could physically march or rally with other people who believe the same way that you do. Would you go as far as committing some sort of violent act to attract attention? By a violent act, could be considered harming other people, using weapons, using things like homemade bombs or things like that. Those would be considered violent acts. So I want you to tell me what your cause is, what you are willing to support in some manner, and then tell me how far you would be willing to go. You may take a very soft approach, you may take a very hardline approach, but this is your answer to that. Now, be very careful when you respond to another person's post. You cannot in any way attack what they believe. What you can say is, I agree with your post because I feel the same way that you do about this issue, or being even more careful if you disagree. It's fine to disagree with someone's thoughts, but you cannot personally attack them. You must state what you disagree with. Okay, you can't go after them in any way. All right, after you have posted your thoughts on violence in general, I want you to look at some colonial protests, or not, excuse me, some protest images. These are not just related to colonial America. And I deliberately have not given you a great deal of information on this because I want to get kind of what they would call a gut reaction for it. So when you open this, you'll see an image that will open up over here. It's kind of a small image. You can click it and enlarge it if you need to see it. And I've given you one little snippet of information. Okay, so this image is about the Boston Tea Party in 1773. And again, you can click it and enlarge it a little bit if you want to take a little closer look at it. But what you're answering over here is the violence that you see in this image, and all of them have some element of violence, is that acceptable to you or not? So answer yes in this box if what you see is you think is perfectly fine, or no, you think this violence is not acceptable to you. You do not have to research or look anything up. Just go through the pictures, and some of them will be more familiar to you than others, but try to look closely. Like this one, I'm sure is familiar to you. This is a form of protest. It's a protest against the United States and what the United States stands for. So again, is this acceptable? Was this acceptable violence to you? Yes or no? Now, when you get to the bottom, you have a question to answer. I want you to copy one of these sentences, whichever one fits your thoughts, and then I want you to complete the sentence. So right down here, you'll say, if you want to copy this one, it'll be violence is an acceptable method of protest if, and you explain the circumstances that you believe a violence is acceptable. Or you could say violence is never an acceptable method of protest because, and give your reason for it. So this is not a long thing. All right, then do file, download, PDF, and submit for that. Okay, so that's what you're submitting. That one won't take you very long at all. Remember, these are all your opinions. All right, so these that you're watching are a form of colonial protest. So now we're going to focus just on the American Revolution, and these are protests against the British. So what I would do for each one of these, because you're going to need this for an assignment at the end of the unit, is in your notes, digital or hard copy of your notes, write down colonial protest and label this one Boston Tea Party. And just kind of write a sentence or two about what you see, about what they do. What is the protest about? How violent is it? Because that's what we're going to be evaluating, is the violence level. Do the same thing with what's called the Boston Massacre. Be careful, it's not exactly what it sounds like. And then this is a pamphlet written by Thomas Paine called Common Sense. So as you watch each one of these, go through and just jot down a line or two that will help you remember what was this protest all about, and make a note about whether it was violent or not. And let me see if there was any more for today. I think that's it for today. Yeah, that's it for today. All right, so have a great day. Let me know if you need any help with anything.